Anthony Edwards suffered a very painful looking right ankle injury earlier tonight, and in this video we're going to talk about what exactly happened and the injury concerns for the Timberwolves star player. Welcome back everybody, I'm Dr. Brian Suter, and my goal in this channel is to teach you about the underlying anatomy and mechanisms of various sports injuries. This was the unfortunate scene earlier tonight with Anthony Edwards being helped off the floor, essentially unable to put any weight through his right ankle after this injury. He's been ruled out with an ankle sprain, but if we look closer here, there's a couple of different kind of mechanisms to what happened that I think explain why maybe he reacted so significantly in terms of the screaming that we all heard on the court. The first thing that I want to point out is it looks like he actually steps and lands on the Bulls player before the sprain occurs. So of course, a sprain is going to be the twist or the rolling of the ankle, but if we look really closely here, it almost looks like there's this kind of momentary jar where his heel lands on the Bulls player before the actual twist occurs. So right here, as he goes down, you can see how his foot is a little bit plantar flexed down into the court, but there's this kind of jarring motion where his heel lands on the Bulls player. Then he subsequently goes into that inversion position that we see him a lot better from a different angle. Here in this back view, again, we can see as he lands that right heel first, strikes on the Bulls player, but then he gets this inversion mechanism where right there, his ankle has rolled outwards. Now, this isn't as severe as some of the other degrees of inversion that we've recently seen, but yet Edwards reacted with the scream on the court like this was something where he could have broken his leg. An ankle sprain, especially a first-time ankle sprain or someone who doesn't get them frequently, can be an extremely painful injury. I've covered sporting events where you run out there and the athlete is like down on the field or on the court screaming in pain and you think they might have broken their leg, but then within 5 to 15 minutes they feel much better and all it turned out to be was just an ankle sprain. So we can't necessarily correlate the severity of Edwards' reaction on the court with the screaming to just how bad this injury will eventually be. The other interesting thing about Edwards, you might remember last season when he had this knee injury where he basically had to be helped off the court after seemingly just tweaking his knee running up the court, but then actually ended up returning back to the game after what looked like could have been a season-ending injury. So Edwards has kind of had this history before of having maybe a more significant reaction to an injury up front than what it actually turned out to be. I'm wondering if some initial posterior impingement in this position where Edwards came down on the Bulls player's shoe kind of contributed to the initial jarring that led to some increased pain along with the inversion ankle sprain. And we'll talk about the anatomy of those two different injuries and the ultimate recovery timeline. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the video. This video's sponsor is AG1 by Athletic Greens. We're a few months into the year, but it's never too late to work on setting intentions for the rest of the upcoming months. For me, accomplishing these goals all starts with a healthy foundation, and that's where something like AG1 fits in perfectly. AG1 replaces key health products in one simple scoop. It's made up of 75 high-quality whole food sourced ingredients and actually tastes really darn good. When setting intentions, consistency is key. AG1 helps to form this daily healthy habit and add some consistency to the start of your day. Simply mix 1 scoop of AG1 to 8 to 12 ounces of cold water, mix and enjoy a great start to your day. They send you a nice canister to ensure that your product is safely stored in the refrigerator once the seal is open. Right now, if you head to athleticgreens.com/BrianMD, they're going to give you a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D supplement plus 5 individual travel packs for free with your first purchase. These travel packs make it even easier to stick to this daily routine and really help build that healthy foundation for your intentions the rest of the year. Thank you again to AG1 by Athletic Greens for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to our learning. With our biodigital anatomy tool here, I've highlighted, of course, the traditional ankle ligaments that we worry about with an ankle sprain, but then also some other structures that I want to reference here for potential injury. Of course, with plantar flexion, like Edwards had where his foot was pointed downwards, we most often worry about a sprain to this ATFL ligament. It stands for anterior in the front talofibular ligament. Running the way around, we're going to have the CFL ligament, and then in the back, the PTFL. Other things that we can sometimes see injured with a traditional inversion or low ankle sprain are these peroneal tendons that run along the outside of the ankle. They start all the way up high above at the knee, and then there's two, the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis. The peroneus longus runs underneath the foot and then actually goes all the way out to kind of the first metatarsal and helps to not only evert the foot, but also do a little bit of plantar flexion. The peroneus brevis comes down and actually inserts on the base of the 5th metatarsal. We've of course heard about 5th metatarsal fractures, the Jones fracture. That's going to be a fracture right through this area. But sometimes what can happen with these peroneal tendons is due to this severe amount of inversion in the ankle, they can actually, number one, tear, or the little retinaculum that kind of runs over the top of them, keeping them in place, behind the lateral malleolus can tear. And these peroneal tendons can actually dislocate or sublux forward in front of the fibula. That can be a much more significant injury, requiring a longer period of immobilization or even something like an operation. So that's one thing that I always think about with some of these ankle sprains, is ensuring that there's nothing else like an injury to those peroneal tendons. The other thing is that posterior impingement that we talked about from the initial jarring step. Posterior impingement is when there's impingement of these structures in the backside of the ankle. You can imagine if we take the foot or an ankle and we plantar flex down, so we point it severely down, that's going to bring up all of these structures in the bones in the back of the ankle. If you're in a plantar flex position and then you suddenly land really hard on your heel, that's going to put increased force through this backside of the ankle, up through the heel, and if you've already got plantar flexion, you might get some resulting impingement of the tissue here in the back of the ankle. Sometimes people can have little extra bone that forms off the back of this that can contribute to some posterior impingement, and so that wouldn't surprise me if maybe that was part of why Edwards kind of reacted so severely like he did. That's also going to be the reason why he wasn't able to control his ankle position, is because that heel jarred on the Bulls player. He had probably some immediate discomfort and shock, and that threw off his body's ability to continue stabilizing his ankle, and then it goes into inversion. If we look at that again with our triple box here, of course we see Edwards come down. That ankle is in a plantar flexed or downwards position, and then the heel landing there is going to cause a little bit of increased compression in the posterior part of the ankle, potentially leading to some initial impingement or at least kind of shock there in the back of the ankle before he goes into the inversion. From a prognostic perspective, it certainly is less reassuring that Edwards was not able to put any weight on his ankle as he was carried off the court. Whenever we're trying to make decisions about getting x-rays for foot or ankle injuries, one of the criteria that helps us decide when we're in like an emergency department or in a clinic is whether or not somebody was able to bear weight immediately and then later on. If they can't bear weight right away, that is more favorable to a possible fracture. And so anytime we see somebody unable to put weight on it, it does at least raise a little bit more concern. Now, sometimes it's simply because the athlete is apprehensive or nervous and doesn't want to make anything worse, so we can't look that much into it. Also, we had the recent case of LaMelo Ball, who walked off the court and ended up having an ankle fracture that kept him out for the season. Overall here, I think I'm optimistic about just the general severity of the injury, but the timeline with where we're at in the season makes this more concerning. Even just a traditional grade 1 or grade 2 ankle sprain, which is kind of the best case scenario here for Edwards, can be anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks in a mild grade 1 scenario to up to 3 to 4 weeks in more of a grade 2. With a grade 2, there's usually a little bit of laxity when they test the ankle, and so they might have a sense of that already, but it wouldn't surprise me if we hear about some advanced imaging like an MRI scan to really help delineate, okay, is there an injury to those peroneal tendons? Is there anything in the bone that we missed on the x-ray? And then how severely torn are those ligaments? Because we're close to the end of the season, this could be something that keeps him out for a major part of the season, if not the rest of the season, depending on where the Timberwolves end up falling. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.